Hi, everyone. Welcome to my YouTube live broadcast. I am Tulin Daloğlu, and today is December 16, 2024. It's a Monday, and welcome to everyone who's watching this show. This is a program solely focusing on foreign affairs. I have a special program today where I will talk to Hoshyar Zebari about Syria's post-Assad landscape and its implications on the Kurds and regional stability. There is a lot to talk about, but first, a quick reminder, not that it's a needed one, but about my guest. Hoshyar Zebari was Iraq's foreign minister from 2003 to 2014. He carried briefly the responsibilities of the deputy prime minister, and from 2014 to 2016, he acted as the Iraqi Minister of Finance. He began his political career as a member of the Kurdistan Democratic Party Central Committee and Political Bureau. In 1988, he was appointed to lead KDP's foreign relations and represented it in the United States and the United Kingdom. That is to say, he has an in-depth understanding of how big power politics work and how to navigate it in domestic politics. Without further ado, let me bring my guest. Welcome, Hoshyar.
Thank you, Tulin Hanım. Very nice to see you. After
Wonderful
so many years. Great seeing you.
It's indeed been, so long. Thank you so much. It's good to see you. When I reached out to you the other day, you told me that you have a lot to say. Why don't we start our conversation first by hearing what it is in your train of thinking, Hoshyar?
Well, it's so nice, so good to be with you.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy to appear on your program. We have a long, old friendship with you. You have been a follower of Turkish, Middle Eastern politics, and I personally do follow you
Thank
on
you.
social media. In fact, many things are going on. As you know, the 2024 was a dramatic year in the Middle East. We all have seen the big changes that happened, the confrontation between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, then the Hezbollah, then the confrontation between Israel and the Islamic Republic. We've seen the activities of the Iraqi militias, the Houthis in Yemen, and the fall of Bashar Assad recently was a dramatic change. In fact, it has changed the scene of the Middle Eastern politics. Still, it's evolving process, but the stamina of the Syrian opposition over the last 13 years and their ability to continue their resistance through various means, I think brought fruit to the final defeat of Bashar Assad and the Assad regime, which has been in power over 54 years. So this will have a big effect, in fact, on the region as a whole, on the peace process, on the regional power position. Turkey is emerging as a major international and regional power in all this. And we follow we follow development. There are in Iraq, in Iraqi Kurdistan, some concerns about the impact or the consequences of all this on Iraq, on our region, and also in Syria. As you mentioned in my biography, I've been one of the founder of regime change and the transition in Iraq. So I know the difficulties, the challenges that facing the new Syrian rulers. And there are some similarities also between the situation in Iraq and in Syria. We cannot copy the same experience. Every country has its own conditions. But I think we are going through a dramatic change in the region. We have to be prepared for that and try to maintain stability, to support the new rulers of Syria, to seek a political, inclusive path for stabilizing the country, for introducing a better system than the old regime that we've seen, the footage, the programs, the evidence of its atrocities against its own people. And what we have seen is only the tip of an iceberg, in my view. And so we are following this development with great interest and concerns at the same time. I think there are great opportunities for Syria to seek a new path, for a new regime, a new Syria, to be inclusive, to be in good neighborly relations with Turkey, with other countries. I'm a fan of history. I've read a lot about the struggle on Syria over the years. And I think what happened on the 8th of December was a dramatic change. It cannot be reversed, this trend. So I'll be available for any questions you may have, and I'll be as open as I can with you.
All right. So you have you're making an emphasis on this monumental change, not only for Syria, but also its implications for the region. But let's focus on Iraq, because you also served as Iraq's foreign minister, deputy prime minister, and finance minister. So shall we first, have a, deeper understanding as to what it is that you perceive that this implication be on Iraq, and then maybe we can build a conversation as to how it's going to play out for the Kurds.
Yeah. Well, our main concern is about the rise of extremist organization in Syria, in a state of chaos, of no state rule. And that was the conditions we saw the resurgence of ISIS or Daesh in 2014. And I can take credit, really, I was the first to alert the world about that possibility of no governing space, and these conditions are conducive for the rise of extremist elements. And we, with the United States, with the international coalition, spent a number of years to defeat ISIS, to prevent ISIS from taking power. We all have seen the dramatic fall of Mosul, of 1/3 of Iraq in the hand of extremists. And also the Iraqi government at the time bear a lot of responsibility for this possibility, for sectarian politics, for alienations, for the lack of empowerment of Iraqi different communities in the political process. And that was the condition that helped internally to introduce some extremist elements. This is one of the biggest concerns that Iraqi leaders, Iraqi politicians have, in fact. We have taken the statement of Ahmad al-Shara, or the HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, of reassuring its neighbor, and Iraq in particularly, that they would not be a launch pad against Iraqi national security or other countries. These are reassuring messages, but really we have to wait and see. Secondly, I think Syria is going through a dramatic, monumental, as you mentioned, change. The biggest challenge for the new Syrian leader is how to master the transitional period, how to move forward, how to make the Syrian feel that the new Syria belongs to all Syrians, irrespective of ethnicity, of race, of region, of gender, and so on. In my view, in my humble view, Tulin Hanım, I think the biggest challenge for the new Syria is the writing of the constitution. And I think that it would be the make or break of the new Syria as a unified country, or disintegration or conflict. So although it's still early, but I can see that would be the key element. Here, the United States, the friends of Syria, international community, its neighbor, can help to chart that scene, you see, confidently. But the process has to be inclusive. Of course, coming to the Kurdish areas or region in northeastern Syria.
Let's come to the Kurdish region in a second, dear Hoshyar, but let's just hold on to it, because I think people in different parts of this world have different perceptions about what may come next in Syria. Some, like myself, have strong reservations about this mental leap of faith in the HTS members who are coming from Al-Qaeda, Iraq, and also then turn to al-Nusra in Syria, and so. And more than any one of us, as the minister of, Iraq, as a foreign minister, deputy prime minister, finance minister, I'm underlying it for our wider audience, because you have also, gone through these fights in Iraq when you try to, win this battle against the radical Islamists. How do you perceive in your heart of heart, I will say, Hoshyar, that these militants can actually bring what they promise so far to the Syrians and the international community? How do you trust these words now?
Well, I think what we have seen so far since their takeover of Damascus, we've seen all the right statement, all the correct statement. They are reassuring their people and the neighbors, and also advocating a new Syria along the line of civil, democratic, inclusive, pluralistic Syria. And reaching out to all the communities, to the Alawite, to the Druze, to the Kurds, to the Christians. I think so far they have acted correctly in terms of the messaging. But still, it's early really to see the formation of the interim government or governing body, whatever you call it. I was pretty much involved during the Syrian civil war or the uprising. And I was on the table at the time when the first Geneva statement came out, the second Geneva meeting, when we included the Syrian government representative with the opposition. And then the Security Council resolution, which all the countries, all the players are talking about, 2254. I think it was based on those discussions. But now there is a new reality. Assad regime is no longer there. We have new rulers. How to legitimize this process? We faced that process at the time when America removed Saddam Hussein and did the regime change, and there was a vacuum. Saddam is not a legitimate country, and you guys, the new guys from the opposition, also don't have the legitimacy. So how we can move to a political process? During our experience at the time, we formed the governing council. It was not a government, it was not an executive body or a legislative body, but it was a reference point until we agreed to have an interim government of Dr. Ayad Allawi for 1 year. And then we did write our constitution. And then we held general election on that basis. That was how the Iraqi process moved. I think in Syria there might be some similarities. There might be,
even with the HTS taking
even
the
with
charge.
the HTS, they are the governing body, literally. But there are other factions, there are other groups, there are other oppositionists, abroad, exile, or inside. We have a number of military factions inside Syria, the Free Syrian Army, the National Syrian Army, and so on. But the good thing, I think now the Syrians have more leverage to decide to determine their own future. There is less regional or foreign intervention. We've seen the Russian taking a step back, the Iranian statement also along that side. Turkey here can play a very important instrumental role. And I think it's in their interest to see a stabilized Syria, an inclusive Syrian governance with a civil constitution that because I think that's the way forward. But again, action can speak louder than words. We're still at the beginning of the process. There are some concerns and fears, as you mentioned, a leap. Okay. It's still early really to judge, but we assume goodwill from all the parties. Yes.
Yeah, hope is always better, isn't it? But when you compare the path that Iraqis went through to what the Syrians will go through in the next weeks and months, there is still this issue between Baghdad and Erbil that remains unresolved. That is the sharing of oil revenues. And Iraq has been going through this for really, some time. What do you think should be the next steps for the Iraqi side to make this more workable for both Baghdad and Erbil?
Thank you, Tulin. Really, we have an outstanding problem with Baghdad. Not all our issues have been resolved under the constitution that we voted for in a referendum by the great majority of the Iraqi people. And we feel here in the Kurdistan region that Baghdad has not been honest in fulfilling the article of this constitution on power sharing, on wealth sharing, resource sharing, and so on. So, but we have never given up hope because we have a tent called the Constitution. We can all go back to that tent and discuss our problem. So dialogue have been ongoing. As early as yesterday, we had a team in Baghdad to negotiate the payment of the salaries of the civil servants in Iraq that they haven't received their payment for the last 3 months. Okay? Just imagine. Anyway, they came back with some pledges or commitment that to resolve this before the end of this year. Don't forget, the Iraqi government at the moment is also a bit vulnerable to this pressure, okay? And they feel exposed in many ways. And sometimes they really have a paranoia about what happened in Syria, that this could be repeated in Iraq. Remember, this new Syrian move from the north, from Idlib to Aleppo, to Hama, to Homs, to Damascus, to Dar'a. This is more the Sunni heartland of Syria. They are back on the scene. They were suppressed, repressed before by foreign interventions, by foreign militias, okay? So they can see this could be repeated in Iraq, okay? And in a number of provinces that are predominantly Sunnis. And that's why they need to have alliances to make the Iraqi government stronger with the Kurds, with the Sunnis, to review their policies of sectarianism against certain communities or more inclusion. So that's why we need, I think there is more realism in the Iraqi government, at least to address this issue of oil export. Iraq, since the closure of the Iraqi Kurdish pipeline through Turkey, up to now, over 15 billion US dollar is losses for the Iraqi budget or coffers. Okay? This was a mistake, I think. We are in discussions with both Baghdad and Ankara, try to resume this oil export, okay? And to be more transparent and so on. So these issues really have not hindered cooperation with Baghdad, although we are not entirely happy about their policies, but we have sought dialogue to address them, resolve them. But the situation is far more complicated. I think what happened in the Middle East recently have changed the ground rules of the politics here. We are now. Sorry?
How so did it change?
Well, it has changed, really. I think before there was some international regional players who could decide or determine the fate. There was certain obligation toward international law, toward commitment to political paradigms, okay, that we all were educated on. This have changed a great deal.
Too much.
The whole international system, for instance, has changed, you see. In the Ukraine, in the Middle East, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the militias accesses, and you name it. I can count dozens of that. But that's why what we are going through in the Middle East is a new era, I would say. Really, we have to be prepared, and everybody is looking after its own interest. Try to protect themselves. Syria is a very important country for Turkey for a variety of reasons, of security, economic, history, and so on. Iraq also. For Iran also. These countries are very important. So we have to maintain a positive outreach to the regional players. You see, I listened to some statement that now the regional power have a stronger say than international partner. Okay, I don't want to mention names and so on, but this reflects a new reality in the Middle East.
Yeah, and now let me try to, crisscross with Syria too, because the Kurdish forces do also control some oil reserves in Syria too. Do you think this will have any similarity between Iraqis and Syrians in terms of writing their constitution? Will they go to become an autonomous region, or do you think they will have a different path? How do you use that, source of oil in Syria and its significance?
Yes, I think the path will be different. And there is one point, Tulin, I think this is my first interview with an international journalist. I decided to do it with you, believe me. I had so many offers. I haven't appeared at all. Tulin, this is very important. You cannot copy the Iraqi experiment in Syria. Neither the Kurdish part or the Arab or the Sunnis or the Alawite, there are differences. You see, since the creation of Iraq in the 20s by the British, the Kurdish issue was one of the key issues for Iraq's stability or to rise as a state, okay? And there are many pledges by the British, and also during successive governors, during the monarchy, the Republican. The Kurdish issue was one of the key issues that was dealt with by Iraqi politicians. Even during Saddam Hussein, he came and offered the autonomy for the Kurds in 1970. So there is a background, there is a history. In Syria, there is no such a thing. Nobody has dealt with the Kurdish issue as a special issue in Syria. They all looked upon the Syria as one country, an Arab country. You see that it's a melting pot for all the minorities and so on. So you don't have the same historical background, okay, in dealing or viewing the Kurdish issue. The SDF has control over large part of eastern Syria. Yes, it has some hydrocarbon resources there. The American friends are there with a declared mission to defeat ISIS, to support these local forces.
Is it only limited to it, Hoshyar, to your understanding? As just, I was, introducing you to our audience. I also said that you know very well what big power politics is and how you navigated in domestic politics. Now, as I'm talking from Ankara, you're speaking from Erbil. We know what we are talking about when we talk about the big power politics and the Kurdish dimension and how Turkey perceives it. And this is always the security dilemma that wedges us apart. So what do you think that the US and Israel is up to now in this weak point of Syria? Do you think, despite the lack of the background like in Iraq, are they up to creating an autonomous region for the Kurds, or is it a complete wrong reading from the Turkish side?
Yeah. Well, they can play a very positive role, the SDF or the Kurds in northeastern Syria, if they act wisely, okay? And consider Turkey as a major power. I mean, to be fair and honest with you. And some of the messaging we've been sending through intermediaries and so on, first and foremost, for them to disconnect with the PKK. I mean, if they want to preserve what they have achieved and to preserve their international alliances or friends, and they have to act like Syrian Kurds as part of this society. They welcome the change. They could present some reasonable concerns and requests. But really, I'm speaking as Hoshyar to you. What I have seen from them, they are still dogmatic. They are unable to disengage or to disconnect because that's the only way. Turkey have been outspoken about the security threat, about their presence there, about the PKK involvement, engagement, and they are not hiding it, you see, privately, publicly, and so on. But we have a large Kurdish community there. There is a large Arab component also working with them. We don't know how this will develop in the future. But Turkey needs to be reassured, as in our experience in 92. You remember, you were still active journalists following this in Washington. We had the same problem. There was a paranoia by Turkey, Iran, Syria, that the Kurdish entity will threaten the unity, territorial integrity of these countries because of the Kurdish population in these countries. But through diligent work and using our international allies and friends, we established a good dialogue, a healthy dialogue with Turkey, that really we are not a threat to your national security. We can be your good neighbor. Yes, we can have our autonomous institution. We had our local election, regional elections, which sent alarms. But through dialogue, through engagement, Turkey was reassured that really we are not a threat. And when the PKK threat came, yes, we cooperated with Turkey to to neutralize this as much as we could. So here, I think the Syrian Kurds and the SDF is facing an acid test about their credibility and their engagement positively, constructively. Yes, there is a great deal of goodwill toward them, and the role they had in reversing ISIS or fighting terrorism, which is all good. Everybody has benefited that. But I think during this period, they have to act rationally, reasonably, and beyond any ideological dogma. This is my honest.
On that ideological dogma, can you help us understand what it is that you mean? What does that dogma push them to do? What it is in their mind? Do they want to carve a land? Are they a threat to Turkey? What is that dogma about?
Well, the dogma, I still don't understand it, to be honest with you, although I'm a full-time Kurdish politician in Kurdish politics. Believe me, I haven't figured out what the hell do they want, okay? An autonomy, decentralized administration, federalism. Still, it's very vague. I listened to one of their spokesperson the other day. Believe me, I couldn't figure out what do they mean by geographical decentralization, okay? This is the ideological dogma. Okay, say it, speak up, speak the truth to yourself and to your adversaries. Be honest. What do you want? Okay, so they want the brotherhood of the people here. How to achieve this brotherhood, I honestly don't have a clue.
That's a good point. When you complain about a certain ethnicity and don't know anything else to do, then that creates a different kind of an atmosphere. So there is that point, I guess, on the Turkish side. Not to say that they are paranoid. I sometimes hear that word, I understand, but it's really a very sensitive issue. And unfortunately, it's growing to be even more sensitive because those who are speaking to the international media or in international conferences and, to decision makers also, I think I'm also following this issue since the early 1990s, Hoshyar, and it would be great to hear some, good positive things about the Kurds in Turkey, that they have that they have anything positive to say about this country. It's always this blaming thing. And I think to a certain extent, I feel like I'm fed up with this identity politics. So it's always good to talk to you on that respect. But as we're talking about, the relationship between not only Turkey and Iraq, but also the Kurdish issue at large. I just, want to push you a little further and ask you, because you said that Turkey is an international player and that you also emphasize that it also has even more regional responsibilities now. Can you tell me, what do you see Turkey doing so far? Is it fulfilling those responsibilities in your perception? And what should it do to help create a more stable and peaceful region here, where Turks and Kurds or any other ethnicity and religious difference could live happily together?
Well, really, I'll be very honest with you, Tulin. I don't have the crystal ball to know how to resolve this problem. It's very historical. There are grievances on both sides, but I think the peace process is dividend in many years in Turkey. For the Kurds to feel part of this great nation without discrimination, to enjoy their rights, their democratic rights, their representation. And I, as a follower like you of this, I think great changes have been made in Turkey. I mean, thinking back 2 or 3 decades, really what have taken place in Turkey was unimaginable during my time, during our militant times, you see. So Anyway, many opportunities have lost or missed in those years. And as I said, Turkey will assume greater role and responsibilities in the region. I mean, I have been saying that before the fall of Bashar Assad regime. Turkey also should be more tolerant, in my view, toward the Kurdish communities in its neighborhood, because we are part of that atmosphere. And we are kin, we are relatives across the borders, really. My ancestors come from Turkey, okay? So with the Syrian Kurds also, I think you will find the same feeling. I don't know, I don't want to anticipate bad scenarios, but really this period of transition is very important. How they position themselves, the Syrian Kurds, in a way to establish a good relation with Turkey, that they should be reassured through our experience that they are not a threat to Turkish national security in any way. And there are many gains and benefits that can be gained, but that needs to build trust. In our experience, we've come through decades, you see, to build that trust. Okay? And they have no expertise in that whatsoever. We are trying to help, to advise if they seek our advice, to tell them what's the right thing to do. But Turkey also have bigger responsibility towards stability in Syria as a whole and in the region. And Turkey's position on the terrorism, on PKK activity have been very well known to me and to you for many years, and they are not new. That they are not against the Kurds, or they are against terrorists, they are against this party, otherwise they have no problem. And I think there has been contacts, I don't know, from my humble knowledge, between the Turkish authorities and some of the Syrian Kurds abroad and so on. You see, to find a solution, not to allow them to be trapped, okay, in a position that nobody wants. Again, Tulin Hanım, it's still early. The things are moving in flux, but we're following development there. We're trying to be helpful to assist our brothers in Rojava in northeastern Syria in a way that could prevent any danger on them through our good offices with Turkey, with our international allies, friends, and so on. So we will do our part in that.
Yeah. So let's just, I know that you have a, meeting that you need to run to, Hoshyar. Let me ask you for your closing remarks, but also one more question. I know that you also know the Syrian landscape very well. Do you think that the YPG represents the whole Syrian Kurds also when you are making your closing remarks?
Surely they do not represent all the Syrian Kurds. There are many Syrian Kurdish oppositionists to YPG. They have been excluded, they have been harassed, their offices have been burned, they have been excluded. And again, I'll come back to this ideological dogma, which is running the local affairs there by exclusions. The good thing, the new Syrian rulers are opening up to all the communities, all the parties. They are not exclusively addressing SDF. No, the other groups or other parties, other oppositionists are being approached, which is positive. We hope that they will be in a united form to talk, to chart their future, to write a positive, democratic, civil constitution. We will support that trend. But they don't represent all the Kurds in Syria.
Dear Hoshyar, thank you so much for your time.
Most welcome.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to see you. Let's keep in touch, okay?
Absolutely. See you soon
All
then.
right.
Thanks
Okay.
to everyone who are watching us. Hope
Thank you.
to thank you, Hoshyar. Well,
That's right.
thank you.
Bye. Bye.
And thanks to everyone who are watching us. We will be live back on air tomorrow. That time it's going to be in Turkish.